Your shadow self is why you can stop stress eating. Carl Jung, for women over 40, some nights are the hardest. You sit alone, the house finally quiet, and yet your mind is loud. You open the fridge, not because you are hungry, but because something inside of you feels restless. You reach for chocolate, for chips, for comfort, and when it's over, you wonder, why do I keep doing this? Carl Jung, the great psychologist, once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What if the real reason you can stop stress eating has nothing to do with willpower or diets, but with a hidden force inside you, something Jung called the shadow self? The shadow is not evil. It is not your enemy. It is the part of you that you push away, the feelings you deny, the anger you suppress, the loneliness you hide. But here's the truth: what you repress doesn't disappear. It finds another way to speak, often through your habits, your body, and yes, even through food. For women over 40, this shadow often grows louder. Midlife brings hormonal changes, stress from family, work, aging parents, or children leaving home. Your body feels different, your emotions shift, and yet society expects you to smile and carry on. So the shadow whispers, and food becomes its language. Imagine this. After a long day, you tell yourself, "I deserve this slice of cake." But the cake is not the real need. What you deserve is rest. What you deserve is validation. What you deserve is to be seen. But since those needs feel unspoken, your shadow directs you to the kitchen, because food is the fastest comfort your mind can find. This is why diets so often fail. They fight the symptom, not the cause. You can restrict calories, you can remove sugar, you can write down every meal. But if your shadow is screaming for attention, no rulebook will silence it. Stress eating is not about hunger. It is about the unexpressed self. Let's take a deeper look. Jung taught that the shadow is formed in childhood. Every time you were told, "Don't cry, be strong, good girls don't get angry," a part of you was pushed down. Those feelings didn't die, they became hidden. Now, in adulthood, when stress triggers you, those same feelings come alive. And food becomes their disguise. Think about the last time you overate during stress. Was it really the food you wanted? Or was it relief, escape, or even a moment of love? The shadow uses eating as a mask because it doesn't know another way to speak. So, what can you do? The answer is not to fight the shadow. Jung believed that healing comes when we face it, not fear it, but when we sit with the uncomfortable truth. I am lonely. I am angry. I am exhausted. These words sound heavy, but they are also freeing. Because once you see the shadow, it loses its power to control you unconsciously. Picture this. Instead of rushing to the kitchen after an argument or a stressful day, you pause. You ask yourself, what do I really need right now? Maybe it's rest. Maybe it's connection. Maybe it's simply silence. By naming the real need, you begin to separate yourself from the cycle of emotional eating. And here is the beautiful secret. Your shadow is not your weakness. It is your teacher. Every craving, every midnight snack, every binge moment is a message. A message that says, listen to me. The hunger was never for food. It was for healing. For women over 40, this awareness is especially powerful. At this stage of life, your body naturally shifts. Cortisol, the stress hormone, rises more easily. Sleep may be disrupted. Estrogen, the hormone that once cushioned emotional stress, begins to decline. All of this makes emotional eating more tempting. But with awareness, you can turn these changes into wisdom instead of battles. Instead of thinking, my body is betraying me, you begin to see, my body is guiding me. Each craving becomes a signal, not an enemy. Each late-night hunger becomes a doorway into your shadow and a chance to reclaim your power. Take the example of Anna, a 45-year-old woman. Every evening after putting her kids to bed, she found herself reaching for ice cream. She hated herself for it. She tried diets, she tried fasting, but nothing worked. One day, she asked, "What am I really hungry for?" The answer surprised her. She wasn't craving ice cream. She was craving comfort. The loneliness of her marriage, the stress of her work, the silence of her evenings. Those were her true hungers. When she started journaling, talking openly about her feelings, and giving herself permission to rest, the ice cream lost its power. This is individuation, Jung's idea of becoming whole. Not perfect, not diet-obsessed, not endlessly self-critical, whole. To integrate both your light and your shadow, your strength and your softness. So, the next time you find yourself stress eating, don't attack yourself. Don't call yourself weak. Instead, pause. Whisper to yourself, "This is my shadow speaking. What does it need?" And then listen. The shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to be seen, to be heard, and to be accepted. Because here is the greatest paradox. The very thing you've been fighting, your cravings, your overeating, your shadow, is also your path to freedom. Jung once said, "I'd rather be whole than good." Imagine if you stopped chasing perfection and instead embraced wholeness. What if you stopped punishing your body and instead listened to it? What if every craving became a chance to connect with yourself more deeply? What if your shadow, instead of being your enemy, became your greatest ally? Stress eating is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new one. The shadow is not here to shame you. It is here to awaken you. And the moment you face it, you begin to reclaim not just your body, but your life. So tonight, when the fridge calls your name, pause before you answer. Breathe, place your hand on your heart, and say gently, "I hear you, I see you. I know you're not hungry for food. You're hungry for me." That is the moment the shadow begins to heal. That is the moment you take back your power. Because the woman who befriends her shadow doesn't just stop stress eating. She discovers something greater. Freedom, wholeness, and the strength to walk her midlife journey with unshakable grace. But let us go deeper. When Jung spoke of the shadow, he didn't only mean emotions like anger or sadness. He also meant desire, the parts of you that were never allowed to shine. Perhaps you were taught to always put others first, to hide your ambition, to silence your needs. Now, in midlife, those hidden parts knock louder, and when they go unheard, they find release in the most immediate form of comfort: food. This is why emotional eating feels almost irresistible. It's not just about hunger. It's about reclaiming lost parts of your soul. That slice of cake is not sweetness, it is unspoken desire. That extra plate of pasta is not comfort, it is your shadow asking for love, for attention, for space to breathe. And yet, here is the beauty. Once you name the shadow, it no longer controls you in silence. Naming is powerful. Jung believed that awareness transforms. When you can say, "This isn't hunger, this is loneliness," you take the first step from unconscious reaction to conscious choice. Let us connect this with science, because Jungian wisdom and biology are not enemies, they are partners. When you experience stress, your adrenal glands release cortisol. Cortisol is not bad. In fact, it keeps you alive in danger. But too much cortisol day after day signals your body to store fat, particularly around the belly. That is why many women over 40 suddenly notice a stress belly that refuses to go away. Here's the crucial link. Emotional stress and the shadow are tied. The more your unconscious needs are denied, the more your body reacts as if under attack, and the more it holds on to fat. This is not weakness. This is biology protecting you. So, how do we heal both the psyche and the body? One step is awareness. The second is ritual. Habits that honor both your emotional and physical self. Jung believed the unconscious speaks through symbols. And rituals are living symbols that tell your body and mind, "I am safe. I am whole." For example, instead of eating when stress rises, light a candle, sip warm tea, and write for 5 minutes in a journal. This is not about restriction, it is about translation. You are translating the shadow's hunger into words, light and presence. Another ritual. Before opening the fridge at night, place your hand on your belly and ask aloud, "What do you need right now?" Maybe the answer is sleep. Maybe it's a hug. Maybe it's silence. By asking, you interrupt the automatic cycle and invite the shadow into the light. Science agrees. Studies show that mindfulness practices like deep breathing, meditation, and journaling reduce cortisol levels. I am PROVE digestion and help regulate appetite. This is proof that when you integrate Jung's wisdom with daily rituals, your body responds with balance. Now let's talk about movement. Not punishment, not endless hours on a treadmill. Movement as expression. Jung knew that the body holds the unconscious. That is why dance, stretching, yoga, even walking in nature can unlock emotions you didn't know you carried. Imagine putting on music you love, closing the door, and letting your body move freely. This is not exercise for calories. This is shadow work through movement. Every twist, every sway, every stretch is your unconscious becoming free. And what about silence? Jung spoke often about the power of solitude. In today's noisy world, silence feels uncomfortable. But silence is where the shadow reveals itself most clearly. If you can give yourself 10 minutes a day of quiet, no screens, no distractions, you will hear whispers you've long ignored. Those whispers, once faced, lose their grip on your cravings. Here is something else many women overlook. The midlife transition is not just biological, it is archetypal. Jung described the midlife as a crossing, a time when the ego must adapt or collapse. This is why so many women feel lost, restless, or suddenly dissatisfied in their 40s and 50s. It's not failure, it's transformation. Stress eating is just one mask of this deeper transition. Beneath it lies a call to integrate, to reclaim, to rise. Your cravings are not betrayal. They are invitations to step into your wholeness. Let me share another story. Maria, 52, was a nurse. Long shifts, constant stress, little rest. Every day she promised herself she'd eat clean, but every night she sat down with a bag of chips and finished it without even realizing. She hated herself for it. One day she read about Jung's shadow. Instead of blaming herself, she asked, "What is this really about?" She realized her shadow was angry that she cared for everyone else, but no one cared for her. The chips were not food, they were protest. So Maria began a small ritual. After each shift, she wrote down one thing she needed but hadn't received that day. Some days it was rest. Some days appreciation, some days simply love. Slowly, the chips lost their hold. She hadn't conquered willpower. She had befriended her shadow. That is the true path. Now, imagine if you too turned every craving into a mirror. Instead of shame, you found guidance. Instead of fighting yourself, you walked beside yourself. What would happen to your health, to your confidence, to your soul? The answer is freedom. And this freedom is not about perfection. It is not about never eating dessert again. It is about choice, conscious choice. Jung said, "Freedom of will is the ability to do gladly that which we must do. You must eat, you must feel, you must live. But you can do it gladly, consciously, without the shadow pulling strings in the dark." So, when stress eating knocks, remember this: it is not weakness. It is a message. Your shadow is calling, and every time you answer with awareness instead of shame, you step closer to wholeness. The woman who embraces her shadow does not need diets to control her. She does not need shame to punish her. She simply sees. And in that seeing, she is free. The man, unaware of his own depths, is haunted by her absence. He does not realize it, but she has stepped into his shadow, the part of him he refuses to see. Every time he tries to forget, silence roars louder than words. Her presence lingers, not because she clings, but because she released him without resistance. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And in her detachment, he begins to feel fate's weight. He wonders why her silence feels like a mirror, why her withdrawal burns deeper than confrontation. He cannot escape it because it is not her he is fighting, but the truth of himself. This is the paradox of feminine power. When a woman no longer feeds the ego, the man is forced to confront his own hunger. The chase begins not because she plays a game, but because she has stepped outside of it entirely. Her stillness disturbs him more than her attention ever did. The secret lies in the archetype of the animator feminine image that lives inside every man's unconscious. For centuries, men have searched for her outside, in faces, in bodies, in fleeting affairs. But when a woman embodies her own worth, when she becomes her own mirror, she awakens something ancient within him. He feels both desire and dread, for she reminds him of what he cannot control. And here is where obsession begins. Not from her pursuit, but from her absence. Not from her words, but from her silence. The woman who refuses to shrink to be chosen, who no longer sacrifices her essence for attention, becomes unforgettable. He may move on, but he carries her echo. He may deny it, but he dreams of her face. She has become part of his unconscious myth, etched into the story of his becoming. But listen carefully. Her power is not about domination. It is not about revenge. It is about recognition. Recognition that love without self-respect is a slow death. Recognition that to chase someone who cannot meet you is to abandon yourself. Recognition that silence is not emptiness, it is strength. When she finally steps away, she does not slam the door. She does not leave poison behind. She simply vanishes like a shadow at sunrise, carrying her dignity with her. And that dignity is what he remembers most. The lesson is simple, yet eternal. The woman who chases becomes forgettable. The woman who waits becomes replaceable. But the woman who walks away in silence, she becomes unforgettable. Because she reminds him of the one thing he cannot possess, her freedom, and in that freedom lies the ultimate truth of Jungian psychology, individuation, to become whole, to face your shadow, to embrace both strength and vulnerability without collapsing into another. She has chosen individuation over obsession, wholeness over fragments, self-love over crumbs. He may never understand it, but she does not need him to afford. The story was never about his desire, it was always about her liberation. The woman who walks away in silence isn't weak. She is simply the one who finally saw more.